The Samothrace temple complex, known as the Sanctuary of the Great Gods, is one of the principal Pan-Hellenic religious sanctuaries, located on the island of Samothrace within the larger Thrace. Built immediately to the west of the ramparts of the city of Samothrace, it was nonetheless independent, as attested to by the dispatch of city ambassadors during festivals. It was celebrated throughout ancient Greece for its mystery religion, Athonic religious practices renowned as the Eleusinian Mysteries. Numerous famous people were initiates, including the historian Herodotus, one of very few authors to have left behind a few clues to the nature of the mysteries, the Spartan leader Lysander, and numerous Athenians. The temple complex is mentioned by Plato and Aristophanes. During the Hellenistic period, after the investiture of Philip II, it formed a Macedonian national sanctuary where the successors to Alexander the Great vied to outdo each other's munificence. It remained an important religious site throughout the Roman period. Hadrian visited, and Varro described the mysteries, before fading from history towards the end of late antiquity. Cult of the Great Gods. The identity and nature of the deities venerated at the sanctuary remains largely enigmatic, in large part because it was taboo to pronounce their names. Literary sources from antiquity refer to them under the collective name of Kaberi, while they carry the simpler epithet of gods or great gods, which was a title or state of being rather than the actual name, on inscriptions found on the site. The Pantheon of Samothrace. The Pantheon of the Great Gods consists of numerous chthonic deities. The Great Mother, a goddess often depicted on Samothracian coinage as a seated woman, with a lion at her side. Her original secret name was Axieris. She is associated with the Anatolian Great Mother, the Phrygian Mount, and the Trojan Mother goddess of Mount Ida. The Greeks associated her equally with the fertility goddess Demeter. The Great Mother is the all-powerful mistress of the wild world of the mountains, venerated on sacred rocks where sacrifices and offerings were made to her. In the sanctuary of Samothrace, these altars correspond to porphyry outcroppings of various colors. For her faithful, her power also manifested itself in veins of magnetic iron, from which they fashioned rings that initiates war as signs of recognition. A number of these rings were recovered from the tombs in the neighboring necropolis. Hecate, under the name of Zerinthia, and Aphrodite Zerinthia, two important nature goddesses, are equally venerated at Samothrace, their cult having been distanced from that of the Great Mother and more closely identified with deities more familiar to the Greeks. Cadmilis, the spouse of Axieris, is a fertility god identified by the Greeks as Hermes, a phallic deity whose sacred symbols were a ram's head and a baton, which was obviously a phallic symbol and can be found on some currency. Two other masculine deities accompany Cadmilos. These may correspond to the two legendary heroes who founded the Samothracian mysteries, the brothers Dardanos and Aetion. They are associated by the Greeks with the Dioscuri, divine twins popular as protectors of mariners in distress. A pair of underworld deities, Axiokursos and Axiokusa, are identified to Hades and Persephone, but do not appear to be part of the original group of pre-Hellenic deities. The legend of the rape of the goddess of fertility by the god of the underworld also plays a part in the sacred dramas celebrated at Samothrace, although less so than at Eleusis. During a later period this same myth was associated with that of the marriage of Cadmos and Harmony, possibly due to a similarity of names to Cadmilus and Electra. The rituals. The whole of the sanctuary was open to all who wished to worship the great gods, although access to buildings consecrated to the mysteries was understood to be reserved for initiates. These rituals and ceremonies were presided over by the priestess in service to the people. The head priestess, and often a prophetess, was titled a sibyl, or sibyl. The most common rituals were indistinguishable from practice at other Greek sanctuaries. Prayer and supplications accompanied by blood sacrifices of domestic animals burnt in sacred hearths. as well as libations made to the chthonic deities in circular or rectangular ritual pits. A large number of rock altars were used, the largest of which was surrounded by a monumental enclosure at the end of the 4th century BC. The major annual festival, which drew envoys to the island from throughout the Greek world, probably took place in mid-July. It consisted of the presentation of a sacred play, which entailed a ritual wedding. This may have taken place in the building with the dances wall, which was built in the 4th century BC. During this era, the belief arose that the search for the missing maiden, followed by her marriage to the god of the underworld, represented the marriage of Cadmos and Harmonia. The frieze on which the Temenos is indicated may be an allusion to this marriage. Around 200 BC, a Dionysian competition was added to the festival, facilitated by the construction of a theatre opposite the Great Altar. According to local myth, it is in this era that the city of Samothrace honored a poet of Iasos in Caria for having composed the tragedy Dardanos and having effected other acts of goodwill around the island, the city, and the sanctuary. Numerous votive offerings were made at the sanctuary, which were placed in a building made for the purpose next to the great altar. Offerings could be statues of bronze, marble or clay, weapons, vases, etc. However, due to Samothrace's location on busy maritime routes, the cult was particularly popular and numerous, often very modest offerings found their way there. Excavations have turned up seashells and fish hooks offered by mariners or fishermen who were likely thanking the divinities for having protected them from the dangers of the sea. The initiation, a unique feature of the Samothracian mystery cult, was its openness. As compared to the Eleusinian mysteries, the initiation had no prerequisites for age, gender, status or nationality. Everyone, men and women, adults and children, Greeks and non-Greeks, the free, the indentured, or the enslaved could participate. Nor was the initiation confined to a specific date, and the initiate could on the same day attain 2 successive degrees of the mystery. The only condition, in fact, was to be present in the sanctuary. The first stage of the initiation was the Marsyas. A sacred account and special symbols were revealed to the mystis, that is to say, the initiate. In this fashion, Herodotus was given a revelation concerning the significance of phallic images of Hermes Kadmylos. According to Varro, the symbols revealed on this occasion symbolized heaven and earth. In return for this revelation, which was kept secret, the initiate was given the assurance of certain privileges, hope for a better life, and more particularly protection at sea, and possibly, as at Eleusis, the promise of a happy afterlife. During the ceremony, the initiate received a crimson sash knotted around the waist that was supposed to be a protective talisman. An iron ring exposed to the divine power of magnetic stones was probably another symbol of protection conferred during the initiation. The preparation for the initiation took place in a small room south of the enactorin, a type of sacristy where the initiate was dressed in white and was given a lamp. The Marsyas then took place in the enactorin, a large hall capable of accommodating numerous already initiated faithful, who would attend the ceremony seated on benches along the walls. The initiate carried out a ritual washing in a basin situated in the southeast corner and then made a libation to the gods in a circular pit. At the end of the ceremony, the initiate took his place seated on a round wooden platform facing the principal door while ritual dances took place around him. He was then taken to the north chamber, the sanctuary where he received the revelation proper. Access to this sanctuary was forbidden to non-initiates. The initiate was given a document attesting to his initiation in the mysteries and could, at least during the later period, pay to have his name engraved on a commemorative plaque. The second degree of the initiation was called the epopteia, literally, the contemplation. Unlike the 1-year interval between degrees which was demanded at Eleusis, the second degree at Samothrace could be obtained immediately after the Marsyas. In spite of this, it was only realized by a small number of initiates, which leads us to believe that it involved some difficult conditions. though it is unlikely that these conditions were financial or social. Lehman assessed that it concerned moral issues, as the candidate was auditioned and required to confess his sins. This audition took place overnight in front of the Attribution. A foundation was recovered here which could have supported a giant torch. Generally speaking, the discovery of numerous lamps and torch supports throughout this site confirms the nocturnal nature of the initiation rites. After the interrogation and the eventual absolution awarded by the priest or official, the candidate was brought into the Attribution, which also functioned as an epopteion, or place of contemplation, where ritual cleansing took place and sacrifice was made into a sacred hearth located in the center of the Holy of Holies. The initiate then went to an apse in the rear of the building, which was probably intended to resemble a grotto. The Hierophant, otherwise known as the initiator, took his place on a platform in the apse where he recited the liturgy and displayed the symbols of the mysteries. During the Roman era, towards 200, the entrance to the Attribution was modified to permit the entrance of live sacrificial offerings. A parapet was constructed in the interior to protect the spectators and a crypt was fitted into the apse. These modifications permitted the celebration of the Cryobolia and the Taurabolia of the Anatolian Magna Mater, which were introduced to the epopteion at this time. The new rites saw the initiate, or possibly only the priest by proxy, descend into a pit in the apse. The blood of the sacrificial animals then flowed over him or her in the fashion of a baptismal rite. Description of the sanctuary. The Samothrace site may appear to be somewhat confusing at first glance. This is due to a combination of the unusual topography and the 2-century-long period over which the site was developed. The sanctuary occupies 3 narrow terraces on the west slopes of Mount Hyas Georgios, separated by 2 steep-banked torrents. The entrance is in the east, through the Ptolemy II Propylaeum, also known as the Ptolemaion, which spans the eastern brook and functions as a bridge. Immediately to the west, on the first terrace, there is a somewhat circular paved depression, containing an altar in the center, which was undoubtedly a sacrificial area, although the precise function of this place has not further been determined. A winding path descends towards the main terrace, between 2 brooks, where the main monuments to the cult can be found. A large tholis, the Arsinoaion, or Arsinoe Rotunda, the largest covered round space in the ancient Greek world, may have served to welcome the Taurs, sacred ambassadors delegated by cities and associations to attend the great festivals at the sanctuary. The decoration of rosettes and garlanded bulls' heads leads some to believe that sacrifices may have also taken place here. The rotunda was built on an older building of which only the foundation has remained. The Arlington, Massachusetts reservoir is an exact copy of the rotunda. Right at the opening of the path leading to the sanctuary, one finds the largest building, the building of the dances frieze, sometimes called the temenos, as it corresponds to a monumental enclosure marking a much older sacrificial area. There is a great deal of variance in reconstructed plans for this portion of the site. It is in essence a simple court preceded by an Ionic propylaeum decorated with the well-known dances frieze. The celebrated architect Skopar may have been the designer. The most important building of the cult, the epopteion, is located to the south of the temenos. This building bears the inscription of Attribution. It is not known who dedicated this building, but given the magnificence was likely a royal. It is some type of temple, but there is no periphery and only a single prostyle. The architectural ornamentation of the facade is noteworthy for its elegance. The interior boasts the largest unsupported span in the ancient Greek world, 11 meters. The south end of this building is an apse, which constitutes the most sacred portion. This apse may represent, according to R. Genovese, a grotto for conducting chthonic rituals. The main altar, and the building for displaying votive offerings, are located to the west of the Hiacutron. The Enactoron, the building for greeting the Marsyas, is located north of the Arsinoe Rotunda, though the version currently visible dates to the imperial era. The third and final terrace, west of the spiritual center of the sanctuary, is primarily occupied by votive buildings such as the Miletian building, so named as it was dedicated by a citizen of Miletus, and the Hiacutron, or naval monument. It is also the location of a banquet hall. Three other small Hellenistic treasures are not well known. Overlooking the central terrace, the space is above all dominated by a very large portico which acts as a monumental backdrop to the sanctuary. Above the theatre, it is in this area of the site that the most recent traces of occupation can be found. A square Byzantine fort in effect built of treasure, as it reused building material from the original site. Diodorus Siculus relates a legend of the temple being founded by Myrina, before she was defeated by Mopsus and Sipylus, and slain. After that, while subduing some of the rest of the islands, she was caught in a storm, and after she had offered up prayers for her safety to the Mother of the Gods, she was carried to one of the uninhabited islands. This island, in obedience to a vision which she beheld in her dreams, she made sacred to this goddess, and set up altars there and offered magnificent sacrifices. She also gave it the name of Samothrace, which means, when translated into Greek, sacred island. Although some historians say that it was formerly called Samos and was then given the name of Samothrace by Thracians who at one time dwelt on it. However, after the Amazons had returned to the continent, the myth relates, the Mother of the Gods, well pleased with the island, settled in it certain other people, and also her own sons, who are known by the name of Corybantis, who their father is handed down in their rights as a matter not to be divulged, and she established the mysteries which are now celebrated on the island and ordained, by law, that the sacred area should enjoy the right of sanctuary.